Thank you all for joining us today for the time management workshop. We have Debbie Patney here, she's an RPC coordinator, College of Liberal Arts. She's going to discuss with us the best practices for prioritizing tasks, overcoming procrastination, and dealing with frequent distractions. So we'll hand it off to you.
Hi, well, good morning. Like she said, my name is Debbie, and I am going to introduce myself in a second. I already went around and asked everyone here to introduce themselves, just so I have a little idea of what types of things we might want to talk about. If any of you that are watching virtually would like to just type in the chat your first name and what program you're in, I'll take a peek at it every now and then, and we will keep moving. So I did 3 graduate programs here at the grad college. So every now and then they ask me to maybe talk about something that I work with every day as an advisor. I work in the College of Liberal Arts Wilson Advising Center. I used to be an advisor in the Exploring program. So I work with students from all backgrounds. And part of the reason that I like to talk about time management and money is because those are typically the things that people in school don't learn anywhere else. So these are not the classes you take in school to prepare you for graduate school or life, but these are things that I've learned by being married almost 31 years. Actually, at the same time as being married, I was a stay-home mom for most of that time, purely because of trying to manage 3 children, in-laws, job move, etc. And during all those different things, I homeschooled my youngest daughter, which was another whole area for me to learn. And then I kept coming back to school just so I could keep feeding my brain. So I had to learn how to juggle a lot of things. And in that process, I think that time management became one of the best friends that I had to do well in school. 3 of my kids are also UNLV grads, and they all did very well here, partly because, of course, I made them learn how to juggle their time better. Before I came to Las Vegas, I used to work at Lockheed Missiles and Space back in the 80s when I was a defense contract planner. So I literally learned how to manage time for engineers to get many projects done. And if you try to juggle $1 million projects with $100,000 projects and about 100 of those at a time, then that's where I learned technically how to manage time and some of the skills that we're going to talk about today. But basically, I really just want you to know time management is something you can get better at. And it's something that if you learn to do it well, you'll get better at that just by putting it into practice. I am a practitioner. I'm not going to use much theory. I'll put a couple citations because it's the right thing to do. But pretty much all of you that are doing a lot of work right now, just sometimes you have a question or there's something that you just think you should be doing. Feel free to shout that out. Put it in the chat if you feel more comfortable. See, a lot of you have some pretty high level programs you're in. And so let me know along the way when we talk about a point, what it is that is starting to cause you some trouble. Because if you're doing a PhD, I guess most likely you're also working or teaching and you're also commuting and you have a family or a dog or something else going on. And those become more important as you are prioritizing your work. So let's go on to talk about what today's agenda was. We will go over all of these just as we discussed. However, most of this is for you. I'm not going to tell you how to do you. I'm going to ask you questions and make suggestions. So really what I do in advising is I ask you what you want to do, then help you find ways to do that so you can accomplish your goals. And that's really what this should be, is a conversation about what's going on, what's going wrong, or what's going well. We will talk about some ways to start doing things differently that might be helpful. That's the handout that I had here in person is called a dump list, and then it's just blank. We'll talk about that. At home, if you would like to get a piece of paper, it's much better to write this down than to type it in. You need some of your kinesiology and your psychology to move together to be able to remember things, and it just helps to write it out, which is why I will also along the way hopefully mention you should have a paper planner. The one they give out for free at the beginning of the semester is a great one because it's meant for students. They didn't have it last year because of COVID, so I started buying this on Amazon for about $12. But a paper planner, in addition to Google or whatever else you use, is fine. But honestly, when we talk about the dump list and your schedule, it is so much better to have highlighters and pens and paper than it is to have something that you type on. There's just something different about what happens when you do that. We will talk a little about interruptions and distractions. The main one is to just put this on silent and put it away. And when you plan your time and you have shorter amounts of time, that's much easier to do. If you're just winging it and you're going to see how much work you get done, you can't turn that off for hours. It's not usually responsible. So the biggest distraction and the biggest interruption is your phone, because nobody else knows what's important to you. So really most of the strategies, still interruptions, distractions, will be to turn your phone on silent, not off, and to go somewhere else and to tell someone what you're trying to do. Leave me alone for an hour, I'll be good. We also can never avoid procrastination, but we sure can reduce it, right? Does anybody here think you could ever get away from procrastinating? We'll talk a little bit about that. So we move on. And also, before you try to do anything new, you should have a little talk with yourself. So it's not crazy to talk to yourself. I do this a lot. I wrote on here what I call it. It's a metanoia. A metanoia is changing your own mind. And I put repentance. It's a term I got from kind of a biblical term, but it makes so much sense when I think about trying to do something different. So basically, you're going this way, and then you have this change of mind. You have a metanoia, and you turn 180 degrees and you go the other way. So keep that visually in your mind, because whenever you try to do something new, it's not at 360 because you just end up right where you started off. It's a 180. And instead of saying to yourself, we have a couple of math people in here, so I think you've probably heard this when you teach, I've just never been good at math. I used to teach elementary school and younger kids, and first graders would say that. And I was like, how do you know? My mom isn't good at math. And if you hear that since you're 4 or 5, you've already decided that one of the best things you could learn to do is going to be too hard for you. Instead, whenever you're tempted to say, I'm not good at managing my time, I've just never been good at public speaking. We have a communications instructor with us. Tell yourself, well, I never put much time into being good at managing my time, but I'm sure if I really tried, I could be good at it, or I'm not good at it yet, because that allows you room for growth, which is a growth mindset that a lot of you probably have heard about in higher education. Change your mind before you start trying to do something new. So instead of putting it off, you're here. Obviously, you had to come here for some reason. Either you needed to attend a workshop for some points or check a box, but you could have chosen somewhere else to be. So you obviously want to change something you're doing about managing your time, and you want to get more efficient, or you want to get better at being on time for things and turning in work early and relaxing and reducing stress. So do some things for yourself. Tell yourself that it's time. Today is a good day to start, and what do I need to do today? And don't worry about the whole end game. It's a new way of doing things maybe, or maybe it's not, and you just aren't doing it, and you already know what to do. I like to go whenever I start something new, like going to the gym, go buy some really cool clothes, go buy some new equipment, maybe a new mat if you're going to start yoga. And with us, that's usually highlighters. And like I said, the paper planner, it's not a big investment, but one that has every day of the week, half hours are really useful, because that's how I manage my time in half hours, and has space for a mini dump list. So space to write, and then have a pen or pencil or whatever. But just having some new supplies can be a really good way to say, now I got to do something with that. Kind of like the first day of school and you go school supply shopping, and then just commit to starting. You can commit to starting, and then really we're going to talk about rewarding. So anybody have any fun rewards they like to give themselves when they do a good job? Just feel free to shout it out or put it in the chat. What's a reward if you get all of your work done this week? What would you do with that time? Go ahead, Edie.
I get a mani-pedi.
A mani-pedi, okay, so there's an hour and a half of relaxation that you would say, I have no worries. I deserve this time. That's a good one. Anybody else have one they'd like to share? Watch a Marvel movie with my kids, right? So those are like 3 hours long, and you need to be able to just say, I'm done. So I have the rest of the evening to watch this, right? Absolutely. So binge watching one of your streaming shows and not feeling guilty about it again and again, right? Anybody else have one that they would do? If I got everything done today or tomorrow, what would I do? It's okay to say take a nap, right? Grad students need to take naps. Hang out at a coffee shop for endless amounts of chat, right? Some of you may be more productive. Get my bedroom cleaned. I cleaned the whole house, which is why I'm standing because my side hurts. I overdid it, but the reward was that now next week I don't have to do all that because I have company coming. So, you have to reward yourself. You have to pay yourself for being a good time manager. So let's go forward. And let's do something. So this is a dump list activity. And believe it or not, we had at Lockheed, and there were 30,000 employees. Most of those people that I worked with were engineers of many different disciplines, designing projects. And they had to be given priorities for their time because they had so many projects. And so they had a seminar with a very expensive consulting group come, and this is what they did with us. It's called a dump list. And it's exactly what it sounds like. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to just dump everything out as fast as you can write or as methodical as you would like. And it can be circular and block letters and cursive. It doesn't matter. Dump out every little thing that's in your head. That's you're saying, I need to do this. Oh, right. I need to do that. I have this project. Oh gosh, did I remember to water the plants? Everything that's in your head, just start writing it. I will mention a couple things as you're writing. Just go ahead and start writing now till about 11:17. Fill it up if you want, not the back, but just the front. And write as little or as much as you want. Don't forget personal things like doctor's appointments, dentist appointments. Maybe you have a pet that needs to get groomed. Just did that. Haircuts, 20-page paper, thesis, doctoral dissertation committee needs to be formed. Like anything that hits your mind, no qualifiers. Don't forget FAFSA just opened up. Grad school applications time coming up. Correct. Scholarship applications. Vaccinations for those of you who want to be on campus. Now's the time. You need some weeks between first and second shots. About 20 more seconds. And throughout today, feel free to add to your list. As things come to the front, just write them down. Okay, so this is something that we're going to talk about why it's useful. Did anybody write enough on your list that you feel like, I feel better already? Or is it overwhelming how much stuff you have to do, right? Okay, so the reason you want to do this periodically is because if you just get it out of your head and put it on paper, you can see more realistically the things that are making you distracted. It's very distracting to try to sit down and watch TV when you think you have free time to only remember, oh, dang, I was supposed to be here working on this. especially if you have group projects. I know grad school, there's a lot of group presentations. It may have meant you just needed to send a text, but you can wake up in the middle of the night and remember you were supposed to do something. But if you dump it out and you do this regularly, you can literally free up some space in your head. So the dump list that I created before this presentation looks like this. If you'll notice, one thing is they just came from every part. Get a turkey for Thanksgiving was the first thing because I've been thinking about it. Because more and more of my kids' extended friendships and future in-laws have been saying, I'd like to come to your house for Thanksgiving. And now I'm like, oh gosh, how big of a turkey do I need to get? So I just wrote it down. Some of these are things that have no end date. Like the very last thing, order wall art for the guest room. Like it literally doesn't have a time and date. It's just I keep thinking about it. Other things have to be done by a certain time. There's a career fair on Wednesday for those of you who didn't know this. And I need to block off an hour to go to it. Okay, so I just need to do that. I hadn't done it. Confirm an airport pickup. I need to remember the date when we're going. 10/29. And I need to make sure we have someone picking us up. So some of these things take a second to just take care of, and others might take a while, like working on an email that I have to draft for week 10. I send this out from our college. I can work on that all at once, or I can every few days add something to it. So they're not necessarily like a one-time thing, but some of them are things that are just, I need to get them on my schedule. And then the next thing that you do is you go through your list, and now's the fun part. If you have highlighters or a marker, you're going to put them in your planner. That's why it's easier to have a paper one. And for example, when's Thanksgiving? It's the 25th of November every year, right? So I need to have that about a week before so we can thaw it out. If you've never done that, they're frozen solid. And so I need to back up a week before Thanksgiving and write in there, I need to have that turkey in my fridge thawing, right? So I put it in my planner, and then I don't have to think about it anymore. But the cool thing is, once I've written it down and used my hand and my pen, I'm going to see turkeys everywhere I go. So every time I go to the store, wherever I go grocery shopping, I'm going to see turkeys starting to pop up. And I'm going to remember that because there's something about writing something out that helps you to remember it. And I may just get that turkey early, but I still need to remember to start thawing it out 5 days before. So I'm going to go through my list and give them a name and a place in my planner. I'm going to put some things in that day. I'm just going to make the call. I'm going to make the check. I'm going to, I don't know, prep degree sheets. I'm going to put 3 times in the next 2 weeks to have those done because it takes a while. So maybe I'll go every Monday from 1 to 3, which is what I usually do. And I'm going to give myself time prep degree sheets. I'll put it in my Google Calendar so my boss knows what I'm doing. And then I check it off. And every time, every week that I do a dump list and I get everything out of my head and that list is empty, now I know that I can focus on the things that are in my today and tomorrow. So it sounds really simple, but once you start doing it, you're going to have to get better at giving yourself end dates and getting things out of your head and giving them a name and a space. So once you've scheduled things, you don't have to worry about them anymore. You just have to use your planner every day to see, what am I supposed to be doing today? Where do I need to be? And it's really good if you look at it the day before in case you need to bring anything with you. Okay, does anybody have any questions about how to do that? Pretty basic stuff, right? Okay, so the priority part is you got to do this somewhere else. You got to have a favorite place to go, even if it's in your own house, but just don't do it with everyone around. So I call this have a date with yourself every week. I like to do mine on like Saturdays, usually in the morning when no one's around. And then I like to sit down at my comfy chair with my puppy sleeping on me, and I just dump everything out so I know what I need to get done for the rest of the week. And some things will be obviously long-term, but I want them on my planner. So I recommend go somewhere else do it regularly, and give yourself deadlines. So for example, Thanksgiving is a deadline, but I had to give myself another deadline because I can't just get a frozen turkey on the 25th and start cooking it. And we're going to go over how this works academically as well. Also, if you tend like me to overschedule yourself and end up with a backache because you did way too much in one day, build in breaks. End your day at 5. Or if you are a grad student and you have to do stuff at night, give yourself a time where you're done and be done. That's it. You're 7 o'clock, it's, you know, no longer, I'm not doing it anymore. And then, remember we talked about rewarding yourself? Maybe on a daily basis, you can't have a pedicure, but you certainly can have free time or go to bed early or just relax or turn on a show. You can reward yourself for sticking to your plan because it's your plan, right? No one told you to do this. We're going to talk about procrastination. I did put a citation on here only because I thought it was an easy way to digest this, but this is a lot of psychology, and I'm not a psychologist. I wish I was, because then I could understand more about the students that I have. But basically, procrastination is just not doing something in the short term that you should do, right? And it's usually things you do not want to do. How many of us procrastinate on things we like to do? Really? Okay, so that's a new one. And why do you do that? Do you know?
Because I set a priority as to what's more important.
Okay. So if something is not a priority, you might just keep putting it off. I call that rescheduling. It's just, you know, wall art. I could do it later too. But procrastination usually is things you really don't want to do because either they're scary, you don't like them, you don't know what's going to happen. Like you might put off going to the dentist. You might put off, I don't know, I've been putting off cleaning my outside windows of my house. It's a big job and I really don't want to do it. So I'll probably hire someone in the end, but I keep putting it off and it bugs me, you know, when you can't see out your windows. And it's because short term, we like to be rewarded and we like to feel good. We like to do things that make us feel good. We like to accomplish things. However, when you think about the things that you procrastinate over, especially if they're things that you don't really want to do, get started on something that you really need to do. Working out, that's a big one. New Year's Eve, everybody says, I'll do it. And then how long does that last? But you are the most negatively impacted when you put something off. And then it can become anxiety sort of building in your head. However, when you just do them, you're also the one that benefits the most by just getting it done. So when you tackle something you don't want to do or you get started with it, you often find it's better to just get it over with, right? Does anyone have that experience where it wasn't really as bad as you thought? So, I mean, I know people that have procrastinated on going to the doctor because they were afraid of what was going to happen, but that can lead to some pretty bad things because it might have been better if you knew up front. It doesn't make the problem go away. And if you have an assignment to do, it doesn't make the assignment go away. It just makes you turn in a low quality piece of work. So let's look at some tips. Again, these I cited, but these are the same ones that I think I've learned over years and years of using them. And these don't have an order, but this article I just copied and pasted them from had a good list. So the first one, it's blocked by your little cursors over the top.
Oh, can you do that?
Is that
on yours?
I want to make sure I read it
It's
correctly.
blocked on this one.
It's just, oh, something's on it. There you go.
You can fill it out. Oh.
I don't know if you all can see that. There's words
There you
over it. Okay. So the first one we already talked about. Just do the worst thing first, right? Even if it's just a quick phone call or something, you just get it over with and then you can relax and work on something else. So it's just a tip to stop procrastinating. If that thing keeps popping up in your head and you need to get it done, maybe just do it. I know that sounds easy, but that's pretty much the best way to get started. And every day on my schedule, like I said, every day I have a dump list. And if there's something on there that I just keep putting off and moving, which I think we all do that in our Google calendars, we just keep moving it, just do it. It's usually something short term. If there's a longer term thing, we'll talk about another way to do that. Which is actually the next thing, chunks. So you might not be able to write a 20-page paper today, but you can break that job down or chunk it into smaller activities. And if you do that, you can at least get started on one thing, check it off, and then it tends to get easier to do the next thing. So start by just identifying from your dump list, what do you need to get done? And then think through, why am I putting this off? And then maybe break it down so you could at least get started on that, right? And then at least do part of it. And that's the same thing with the 10-minute trick. If you just start doing that thing for 10 minutes, you might find you could just keep going. But if not, you could stop at 10 minutes and then evaluate, what do I need to do to get through this? The other thing is, some people like can go to the gym, they do it better if they have someone with them. And especially with someone who also hasn't been wanting to go to the gym with them. Because when you have someone to do it with, I don't know, the nature of many of us in higher ed is we're competitive. We like to do more than the other person, or we like to tell the other person, hey, I just finished my workout, did you do yours, right? So maybe share it, and on your schedule, maybe sit down and evaluate it. And I know I used to tell my mom, and then as I grew up, I told my younger daughter what I was doing. And that accountability can feel pretty good, or make you want to go take care of it so you can feel good. So sometimes just a little bit of your own pressure with a friend can help you get started. And then again, you'll see this all the time. I like rewards. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's something you enjoy, if you have to do something you don't enjoy, look forward to something you like. It's a pretty easy way to trick your brain into, I'm going to get better at this. And when I do, I get to go see a concert. When I finish all my work early, I get to go do something I actually want, which for me is usually read a book or something. But pick something and identify it so you can reward yourself, so you will stop avoiding the things you don't want to do. Does anyone have anything to share or tips to add to this? Okay, well, if you do, feel free to put them in the chat as well, because I know there's a lot of other things that people use. There's also some technology things. My son was a bio major, and he had to study for really fun classes like OCHEM, and he had this little app on his phone that gives them points that they get money. What was that? Do you know what that's called?
I don't remember what it's called, but it's if you're connected to campus Wi-Fi and you don't use your phone during class time, every minute that you don't use your phone, it gives you points, and you can get gift cards to
Food and
Jamba
stuff.
Juice,
Yeah.
or whatever it is. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because it was a way to reward them for endless amounts of studying, but to give them a focus. Because honestly, sometimes you just study too long. You cannot in your brain hold hours and hours of new things to memorize. That's why phone numbers are 7 digits. We can't remember things for long periods of time if you don't go over them and over them and over them and take rests between. Just like anything else, you have to do shorter amounts of things over longer periods of time to reinforce it. That's why we go to school for 12 years, I think, instead of try to rush it all through, because there's a lot of memory muscle that has to be developed. So when you get to college, you can use all those skills to put everything together, right? So if you have other things that you'd like to share, feel free, but otherwise try some of these and see if even one of these can help you stop procrastinating as much. However, keep in mind, we will always procrastinate. Yes.
Occasionally remind yourself why you're doing it.
Exactly.
Step back. How does this task, be it 10 minutes or 10 months, how does it fit into the longer range goal and objective I have for myself? And why is that goal important to me?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Because
just
they're your
understand the
goals.
reason why you're doing it.
That's right. And I think my next slide. Let's skip that. So I think this is pretty much what I was trying to communicate. This is for you. Like, it doesn't affect me if you don't complete your goals, but it surely does affect other people, but mostly it affects you. So it's your time, and you certainly can waste it if you want to, That might be the reward you give yourself, is to just, Saturdays are free day and you just waste Saturdays. And it's not a waste if you plan to waste it. And time is something you don't get back. So just like we talked about, it's really for you. And if you have a goal, like completing a PhD is a huge goal. And lots of students meet with me, which I'm an undergraduate advisor, and they say, I just can't imagine being in school that long. And then they proceed to take 7 to 8 years to do their undergraduate degree. And I'm like, you do realize you could have at least done a master's in that time as well, because they didn't have a goal and they just kept losing focus and other things became more important. In the end, they ended up not being able to do something that they certainly could have done if they really wanted to. So it's for you. It's your time. And it's something that, again, you can't freeze time. And I see so many people try, especially celebrities and things, and they try to pretend like no time has passed. And then you watch, anybody watch John Daly and his new show, and years have gone by. He's a comedian on the Daily Show, and now he's got his own show.
Jon Stewart.
And he says, yeah, Jon Stewart, I'm sorry. And he says, this is what I look like now. Well, time didn't stop for him. And it's pretty hilarious because we try to pretend like time has stopped, but you may take forever to do something you could have just done, and now you're over on this side and someone else got a lot done in that time. And I like to equate time and money because there's a lot of sayings, time is money, but literally we can relate to money better. You have a fixed amount of money, you can earn more money, you can spend it all, you can just lose it. However, it's very much like time. It's what you do with it that people then look at you and go, wow, you really accomplished a lot. And so maybe if you start to monetize your time, you would be a better manager, because we do hire money managers, right? We hire people to invest for us and we care about where it's going and we want interest. Maybe time for you should be more valuable than what you've been, treating it as. And maybe you could start to think about, what is it in value to me? If it's valuable to you, then invest it and try to use it more wisely. Let's go back one slide here. So I wrote an example of how I used to write papers. Most of my higher education program was writing papers. So reading and reading and reading tons and tons of literature, and then putting all the literature together, right, synthesizing it and using all of your citations and everything to make a new thought and then defend it. And so this is what I would do. I would put the date in my syllabus. Let's see how we're doing on time here. Put the date in my syllabus where it had to be done, and then I tricked myself and put it a week earlier. So that was the date I worked with. Why? Because something always goes wrong with sending in a paper and submitting it on web campus, right? Or the printer shop can't get in, or you don't get your paper. Something always happens. So a week earlier, a fake deadline, and then back up and start to assign yourselves the dates. So in high school, middle school, your teachers did this, and they wrote on the board, rough draft due. And even in undergrad, here, come up with a question, right? And then they break it out. But you could do this yourself, chunk it. So I know that's not a very technical term, but chunking it is then back up. How many weeks do you need to get your research articles? How many weeks or days do you need to come up with an outline? And when are you going to start working on it? Depending how much time you have, you can spread this out a bit more. And most of you have more than one class at a time. So you need to manage your time over a semester or something. If you chunk and break down your time, you'll usually finish early enough to have it checked at the writing center, or have a couple quick edits at it, maybe get it printed and bound really nicely, and even sometimes catch some errors. Like, what was I thinking when I wrote this? Okay.
What you just described is called the backward planning process. It's called begin with the end point in mind and know when the end point has to be done. That is a fixed date. Now let's look at the milestones, the sequence of steps it takes to get there, and allocate whatever is the appropriate amount of time for each one of those steps. So once you lay it out, you can see, do I really have enough time that I've allocated for each step? And then remind yourself every day or every week when you put your planner together, how am I doing on that long sequence of a 20-page paper or getting through a semester's class, whatever it is. go backwards and give allocations of time. Because you're gonna really quickly find when you start running behind on your schedule, you can't, once you've spent the time, you don't get it back.
That's right.
So trying to catch up when you're behind is all the harder. Not that it's impossible, it's just harder.
It's stressful. And this is a fairly stress-free way to keep you on focus for the goals you already have for yourself. That's exactly right. So he made it sound more technical than I did, but literally it's the process of when I used to plan, like I said, a multi-million-dollar defense project, and I had to help. I didn't do any of the engineering, but I had to constantly check in, and we used shop calendars, which was day 345, and then count back 20 days for you to do that, and he needs this many days, and these can happen simultaneously, right? You can simultaneously go to the library, meet with your group, and write a rough draft in a couple of days on a weekend. So, but planning it out and just putting it in your planner and then sticking to your own schedule and readjusting if you have to. Sometimes you have to readjust. You're behind or you got sick or something. But when you do that, you usually will be done earlier. And then don't forget to reward yourself for sticking to it. Just try it with one of your upcoming projects and see if it doesn't work better for you. Let me skip over that next one. So I had another way of thinking about this. Sure, go ahead, jump in.
So this term, the very first week is typically like syllabus week. So you don't have a whole lot of homework. So this year, I started off and I did the first week and the second week reading. So now I'm a week ahead on my reading. And just in case something comes up, I'm ahead and I can skip it for 1 week and I'm not actually missing out on any content for my classes.
And how does that make you feel?
Honestly, I feel very prepared.
Yeah.
So relaxed.
And the confidence that comes with being on top of things is huge. When I went back to school, I had been out of school for 20 years because I had children and stuff. And when I went back to school, I knew that some of my computer skills, I used to do accounting on spreadsheets by hand, and now it was all on Excel. We did statistics. We didn't get to use calculators for a lot of stuff back when I was an undergrad. And then suddenly the computer had to be told how to use the information. And that was my problem. So I needed more time to do my assignments. So I started early. As I learned how to do these things, I got so much more confident and my grades were good. And I didn't feel like I'm the only one who doesn't know how to do this. And then I started being asked to be in people's groups. Students would go, do you want to be in my group? Because they saw that I was on top of things and I had friends who were my children's ages, but my confidence grew in my abilities because I knew I could do the work. I just needed extra time. And just like you said, it's such a satisfying feeling to be on top of things. And then what if someone said, hey, you know what? Let's go to LA for the weekend. You're like, let's go. I'm good. My reward is huge. So very good point. Does anyone know who Warren Buffett is? Some of you may or may not. Yeah. Does anyone want to tell me who he is? Who's Warren Buffett?
We created an investment firm called Hathaway.
Berkshire Hathaway.
Berkshire Hathaway. And it's done extremely well. He's got a relatively conservative approach to investing. He only chooses companies that he's going to hold. Well, in fact, he buys them, like Burlington Northern Railroad, Geico Insurance, things like that. But he holds on to it for a long, long time, knowing that fundamentally this company's going to grow over time. History has proven him correct. People who've invested in Berkshire over the years have done very well compared to the market in general. So he's considered one of the great gurus of American business. What a lot of people don't know is that his relatively unknown partner is the genius behind a lot of the pickings that they do. And that's not to say that's wrong.
No,
I mean Warren is more the face of the company, and he's very kind of like talking to grandpa, and the smart old guy. He's been around a long time, and he has very touchy, feely quotes and expressions that are easy to remember and make a lot of sense.
Right.
So it's not overly technical.
That's exactly right.
And what's he called? The something of Omaha.
Yeah, not the sage. He's called the Oracle.
The Oracle of Omaha.
Omaha.
Yes, that's where the company's
Which is,
based.
I believe, where he lives and has lived in the same house. So he was at one time considered the richest man in the world. And then as he started just giving his money away, people started to realize that that Warren Buffett had a lot of good sage advice, and they wanted to spend time with him. And the reason I use that is because when I think of how valuable is my time, I think of how valuable is Warren Buffett's time. So every year since his wife passed, he has this charity that he gives to in her honor, and he raises money by auctioning a lunch with him. It's called A Lunch with Warren Buffett. And so this last time they had it pre-COVID, this founder of this cryptocurrency company, Justin's son, paid and won $4.5 million to have lunch with Warren Buffett. And their article is in Forbes if you would like to read it. It's really interesting. He thought, I can learn so much about how to be rich. And then most of the hour or so they had together was spent talking about his family and his marriage and his life. And he said, I guess Warren doesn't really eat very big meat, like a rich food, although this was a very expensive lunch. He said, I'm doing what he's doing. And they had I don't know, burgers and fries. Basically the guy could have anything he wanted. And he said, I want to be like him. And he found that that lunch was worth it when he came away. He learned so much more about himself. And so if you think about what your time is worth, maybe you only earn $10 an hour right now. Or maybe you have a medium job and you earn about $25 an hour. However, think of yourself in terms of what you're going to do. What's your plan? You're going to be a $500 an hour person. Some of you will be. Some of you will have short hours and lots of money. It will be investment. But that's what your time is worth, because that's where you want to be. And if you want to be, for example, a lawyer, and you're not one now, but to get there, you have to do some things. You have to take the LSAT. You have to get through law school. You need to, maybe be in the law review. You probably have to do some internships. You have to pass the bar. Your time is really valuable. You have a lot of stuff to do, and you need to start putting it down so you can start checking them off. But if you had to pay yourself to spend an hour with yourself, how valuable is your time? And maybe if you start thinking about yourself in terms of what you want to do and how valuable it is to you, you will be a better steward of your finances and of your time. So I looked at a bunch of these idioms about time. I was going to use one of them for my subtitle, and I thought I can't choose. However, these are just popular sayings. There's tons more that seem to be somewhat true to me. And so maybe they leave you with some thoughts about of just really managing your time. It's something that we all struggle with. However, we can all be a little bit better at it and maybe try some of the strategies. Try using your dump list regularly and go invest in a planner. These first steps are pretty much the ones that get you started. And with that, I will stop talking and see if there's any more tidbits of wisdom or any questions that anyone would like to share out.
Anybody in person have a question? Comment?
What if you find yourself, you've got your list, you've got yourself organized, you've got your priorities down, you've got so much to do that you find yourself trying to be as efficient and effective with literally every minute of the day. I have zero time to waste. No, I don't even own a television. I don't waste time on television. I don't even own one. But the things I do between school, my job, things I volunteer for, other projects I'm working on, it's just, I find myself just racing from one thing to another, just to stay on top of all the things I'm trying to do. And it's not about money. I don't care about money. I'm old enough that I see the non-value in it. And I've done enough. I had a long career in the military, overseas a lot. So I've seen how the world works. So therefore, I try to spend my time how I can help, not need help with people. Example, I volunteer for the Red Cross disaster assistance teams. I'll get a call at midnight, hey, somebody's house burned down. You got to get over there and help them out.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's fine. I mean, I've seen enough tragedy and trauma. I know how to help people organize around it. But going to school, the courses got their requirements. I'm a little disappointed how pandemic has forced 2 of my classes are literally asynchronous. It's like self-study. The class doesn't even meet online. It's like, here's the schedule. If you got a question, contact the professor. Here's the schedule when you got to turn things in, when the quiz and exam and the essays due. Okay, it's fine. I understand the pandemic forced that, but it's just, I get a lot more being in class, engaging the other students and the professor. So hopefully we'll get past this pandemic if everybody decides to go out and get their shots. But that's beside the point. But again, if I just find myself, and I get frustrated when, like, example, I didn't even know this workshop existed until there was one of those mass this week at UNLV type emails, and that looks interesting. Let me go. And then I tried to get on. I went into that loop. I couldn't get out of it until she showed me that. No, don't go to Grad Academy down here. Go to Grad Academy up here. Well, okay. And when I find myself wasting time,
Right.
then I get frustrated.
So is your question, how do I not have so many things to do, or how do I do this better?
How do I accept that I can't do it all and not frustrate myself?
So I think that's why I shared my real claim to fame to being able to manage time is having to do a lot of things I take care of for 11 years while I was in grad school, which is why I never ended up working after that, because my father-in-law had cancer, which was terminal, and homeschooling my daughter and keeping a large home and, all these other things. There are times where you do have to do a lot. But for the things that you don't have to do, sometimes you need to sit down and decide what is important. And I also do volunteer a lot. And my husband would tell me, you're doing too much. So I think the accountability helped me, is to have someone else look at what I was doing and say, why are you doing all of that? And that helped me a lot, because I was doing so much for everyone else, but I was getting burned out. So if you're feeling burned out, maybe look through what all the things, because everything cannot be a priority. If everything is a priority, then you're a firefighter. And, we know from all the fires going on now that they just go from fire to fire and then they just burn out. So, your life is hopefully going to be long and rich, and maybe evaluate, are the things that I'm doing, I have to do them all? Can someone else do some of them? I teach my children and other people along the way how to do some things that I can't do because they could do them. So if you can get someone else to do things that are really important, if you can volunteer a little less often, but still do the meaningful things that you need to do, if you can prioritize, how important is it so I didn't do a PhD. I evaluated that every time that I was in a program of what would this do? And it was constantly taking time away from my family and not helping me with the job that I needed. I wanted to advise undergraduates, and you don't need a PhD to do that. So I kept wanting to do it for myself and thinking, but I don't need to do it. And I finally made peace with it. I don't want to stay up doing homework anymore. But it took a while for me to just say, that isn't what I need to be doing, but the things I need to be doing are more important. And now I feel relaxed. So maybe evaluate or talk to someone who knows you well. All these things that you're doing, if they're burning you out, you should find a way to not do all of them. If they're not burning you out, manage your time better and try to build in some breaks. Usually helps. So does that help at all?
Sort of.
Yeah.
I've got to look at the list and see, I can't do all of them. What needs to come off the list?
And prioritize them. Yeah, for yourself, because this is really a self-reflection. If you are doing mediocre on a lot of things, what would happen if you did really well in a few things? And then maybe those things get done and you can now tackle some others. So, there's a fixed amount of time and you need to sleep and you need to eat, and maybe you have relationships that need to be fed too. So I had kids and I had only so many hours that I could steal for myself, and grad school helped me to have time for myself, but I found that just doing more than that was not fair to them either. So sometimes it's a juggling act, and sometimes you're dropping more balls than you're picking up. So I think that's the hard part, is knowing your limits and building in some self-care. I just want to mention also, I used to be an academic success coach in the Academic Success Center, and that program, they have workshops that they put online. If you go to UNLV ASC, Academic Success Center Coaching, you can either attend virtually or in person some of these workshops. And there's a lot more science behind theirs. They have some really good presentations. So feel free to also participate in any of their programs, especially for undergrads. They specifically are trying to help you get into grad school with your skill set. So see if that helps. Anybody else in the chat have anything they want to share before we move to lunch? No?
Okay, well, thank you very much. That was wonderful, very informative. I think we all got some good tips and tricks we can take home. Thank you, everybody, for joining today, both in person and virtually. I'm gonna put a link for a little survey in the chat. If you have a couple minutes, if you could fill that out for our virtual friends, it'd be great. Again, we just want to thank our presenter. That was a great presentation. Thank you for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and have a great day.